Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
So Pete, you and I have been friends who have been super passionate about sharing our opinions about films, about television shows, entertainment, but we don't really have a good structure or a common language in terms of, what our opinions are, right?
Or at least not one that's easily maybe understood by other people, right?
Yeah, it's our own unspoken system, right?
Absolutely. And I think you and I tend to generally agree. There are a few points of difference. I still think Nicolas Cage is the best actor known to mankind, but
I know you do.
We can agree to disagree on that, or we can agree to agree.
We can agree to agree. So I think, for listeners who don't share the same Jedi mind meld that we do, we've come up with let's not call it a system, let's call it like guidance in terms of how we're looking at, films and how we're looking at television shows. And I think we tried to distill it and make it kind of like as simple and intuitive and useful as possible, right?
Yeah, that's right. And, the problem I have with reviews ultimately by some critics is that the rating system that they give, whether it's, out of 5 stars or out of 10 or out of 100, it seems generally...
It's not relatable. It's not relatable.
Exactly. It's incredibly not relatable. And at the same time, it seems very arbitrary.
Yeah,
right?
I agree.
There are so many times when I see... And this doesn't just apply to movies, by the way, or TV shows. This applies to anything that you're rating with a numerical system, be it books or games or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
But why is one movie a 7.5 out of 10 and another 7.2 out of 10 or another a 10 out of 10?
Yeah.
I mean, there are so many things that go into that into that one number. It's hard to distill what that means, right? Because a 7 for you may not be a 7.5 maybe a 7.5 for me, right?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the Siskel and Ebert, right, historical thumbs up, thumbs down. That's obviously very simple, and it gives you something that's a clear outcome, but it doesn't really tell you what to do, and it doesn't really rank things, within those thumbs ups or thumbs downs, right? And then, of course, you've got the kind of the Rotten Tomatoes, which is much more numeric, and that's good for ranking things, especially when you're talking about, like viewer or fan feedback in terms of, is Top Gun ranked as a better movie than Ghost or something like that, right? And that's useful. But just in terms of saying like, hey, what should you do with this movie or show? Should you see it, not see it, kind of see it?
These are all, those kinds of rankings are very good to give you a very high level, quick view on a film's critical and or, regular audience response. But in terms of nuance, not really helpful.
So let's go through what we've come up with for shows or movies on streaming services.
Yep, I think that's a good idea. So I think when it comes down to streaming services, the practical reality is, do you have access to the service? And if you have access to the service, is it something that you want to watch or not watch? And even if you don't, or if you do have access to the service, do you just want to bother with it at all or not?
Yeah.
Right?
We're hitting the high points. We're telling people exactly what to do, or what we recommend.
Well, what we recommend, at least. Exactly. Yeah. Right? So I think, and again, you and I particularly are not necessarily indicative of the average population, although that does seem to be trending that way, right? The cord cutting and cable cutting wars have now become, I don't want to have 30 different cable channels, so I'm going to have one streaming service. That's a great idea in principle, except for the fact that now we have like 30 different streaming services, and each of them cater
Careful
to
what you wish for.
No.
Careful what you wish for.
Exactly, right? And so now instead of me having ESPN bundles, or in the UK it's a Sky News bundle or a Sky Channel bundles, instead of that, now I have Disney Plus, I have Paramount Plus, or I have Amazon Prime, or Netflix, or Hulu. It's getting to that same level, right? And the frank reality is that most people don't have access to all of those.
Maybe they should.
That's a different conversation, I think. But yes. So I think the system that you and I have come up with is pretty simple, which is to say that we're gonna, anything that comes up on TV, on a streaming service that's either a movie or a series or a limited series, whatever it is, I think the easiest way to say it is we're going to say at the end of the day, when we watch it and when we talk about it, we're going to ask ourselves, is this a show I want to watch?
Right.
If so, do I need to have the service?
Mm-hmm.
If not, can I possibly mooch the service off of somebody else?
Yes.
Or, you know what? The show is so bad or the movie is so bad, it's not even worth it.
Yeah.
Whether you have the show or not.
Exactly. So I think there's kind of a threshold, which is, do we recommend people watch or not watch? Right? And then if it's a watch, it's level 1, this show or movie is so good that if you don't have this streaming service, whether it's Netflix, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, or whatever, you should go out and subscribe to this service, HBO Plus, everything plus. You should either go out and subscribe to this service only because this show is so good, right? And that would be something like, for example, Game of Thrones on HBO, right? So good, it justifies going out, paying that monthly amount for the service.
Right.
And then the lower tier, or the lower level is, hey, we recommend you watch this, but don't feel obligated to pay the monthly fee for the service. If your brother or friend has the same thing, go ahead and borrow their password, watch a few episodes. It's definitely worth watching, but we don't think you need to actually kind of spend money for it if you don't already have the service, right?
Right. And let's just caveat that right now by saying Films and Stuff does not condone sharing of passwords or illegal any activities of any kind. That is on the advice of counsel, who is sitting across from me with a gun pointed at my head.
Also a crime, by the way. That's probably a crime.
Yeah, but he's my lawyer, I'll give him a pass.
You've given him consent.
Exactly.
No bodily harm. So we may recommend that you borrow someone's password, but we don't condone that you borrow that person's password.
Or download or stream it illegally.
True. We don't condone that. Okay, so that's for films. That's for movies and television shows available on streaming services. And then there's movies separately, which are not available on streaming services. We've kind of got our own separate, system or guidance for those as well.
Right, and it's quite similar though. It's not too dissimilar. But instead of saying, look, you need to go subscribe to Paramount Plus, what we're saying is you need to go to the cinema to watch it, right? So in these times, I understand that, things are starting to finally get back to normal, but there is still a lot of hesitancy for people to go out in public, and it's fully understandable. But I think
the ranking has taken on new meaning, where we say Spider-Man, for example, No Way Home, go risk your life, go to the cinema and see it.
Well, okay. Let's again caveat that Films and Stuff does not condone you having to risk your life to go see any movie. But yes, I agree.
Risk your health. Risk an expensive, overpriced ticket. Go to the cinema and watch it. It's that good. Yeah. Or what would be the tier lower than that?
Or there may also be movies which we know, for example, Disney is starting to do this, and Warner Brothers is definitely doing this, where they say, look, the movie is going to be in the theaters for, let's say, a period of 6 weeks or 10 weeks, and thereafter it's immediately going to drop on Disney Plus or HBO Max or whatever streaming service it is. If the movie is not great or not good enough for you to justify potentially exposing yourself, or you just don't want to go to the cinema for whatever reason, we can say, hey, give it time. It's still worth watching. Maybe it's not must see that you have to go see it in the theater immediately. Give it time, and as soon as it hits the streaming platform of your choice, watch it then.
Yeah. And I think actually, that's a very good distinction, which is sometimes, our recommendations are based on, again, I'm going to use Spider-Man No Way Home because that's a pretty recent film that we've both seen and we loved it. That's something that we think is a great movie. You should definitely go see it. 1, for the cinematic experience. 2, to avoid spoilers, and it's very timely.
Right.
Whereas, let me say something like Matrix, for example, if you don't mind, is something that I think you should see in a cinema, not because the movie is so great, but just because it's kind of a important pop culture event. And, again, if you want to be kind of involved in the water cooler talk, it's something that you probably would want to see rather than waiting for it to come out. Whereas, some rom-coms or dramas aren't really timely from a cultural perspective. There's not really anything you're going to miss out on. So that's something you can probably wait to, stream it or watch it through another service later.
That's right. And I think one of the points you touched upon earlier, which is really important, is there are also certain movies, to a limited extent for The Matrix 4, but certainly with its prequels and certainly with other blockbusters, you're never going to be able to emulate the quality of the audio visual experience at the cinema that you would at home. I agree. Right? I agree. You want to hear...
It's usually action movies.
That's right.
Yes.
So you want to hear Tom Cruise's Top Gun fighter jets roaring at the screen, that's like 5 times, 20 times the size of your normal TV. Yeah. And you want to hear the 20.5 surround sound systems that are crazy. These are things that you cannot, or just it's impossible to emulate at home, or virtually impossible to. So, some movies you just have to appreciate in the cinema because that's what they're made for. But as you rightly pointed out, I mean, do I need to see Drew Barrymore in some rom-com at the cinema? Probably not. Would I have enjoyed it? Sure. But maybe. I can watch that at home, right?
Yes, you can.
So,
and maybe you want to see it at home because, for example, you're very open about your infatuation with Nick Cage. You're not at all embarrassed about that, but maybe someone who isn't as comfortable with their obsession with Nicolas Cage would want to watch that from the comfort of their own home.
Yeah. I mean, I want to see Nick Cage anywhere, whether it's from the comfort of my own home or not.
Larger than life. Maybe there's a new rating for you for Nick Cage films, which is both.
Oh yeah, that's right. In fact, and what you
see it now and again later
is have an iPad at the cinema so that you can watch him in surround vision.
Yeah. That's something that cinemas at some point need to do is integrate the second screen, right? I mean, we've seen it a little bit with X-Ray on Amazon, and almost everything I watch, I'm also either doing through IMDb or Wikipedia or something else, saying who is that, what else have they been in, where does this fit in? I do it a lot with the Star Wars, the new spin-off series. I do a lot of that to kind of catch up on some of the background or some of the references that I'm not aware of. I do it a lot with cinema, to understand, who the cast is and what else I recognize them from. I know cinemas don't want everyone on their phones. I know they don't want like all these like screens lit up, in the cinema. But to be honest, for me, that's a very valuable way to get the audience involved and have them just kind of like enjoy the experience more.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound like that old man on the porch yelling, "Get off my lawn." That's not. I think it's perfectly suitable for at home. Where you can kind of, if you miss something on the screen, it's very easy to rewind a few seconds or a few minutes to go back.
True.
But having said that, And again, I'm going to sound like a doddering old man here, but I think
You are.
this is probably the wave of the future. Is there must be, if there aren't, we've already seen it in airlines, but I imagine that it won't be too long before cinemas start offering like a small, like mini tablet, like an iPad mini size tablet on your armrest, which is tethered to the seat. So, and giving you all that trivia or background or access to IMDb
and feedback and audience feedback. I
and
bet there's
exactly
something where
right, because you can track all these things. I imagine that if cinemas aren't doing it yet, please contact filmsandstuffpodcast@gmail.com. We're happy to act as advisors.
Indeed we are. There was pop-up video years ago, right?
Oh, on VH1. That's right.
Yeah.
With the music videos.
Maybe we should come back with a pop-up video, right? And you could be watching Game of Thrones, and then you could have a bubble over Khaleesi's head.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what X-ray pretty much is, except X-ray requires manual intervention, right? Or not intervention, but it requires some kind of manual activation upon the user.
Manipulate the mouse.
Yeah.
Or your finger on a trackpad.
Yeah.
Okay, so for streaming television shows and movies, we've got you must subscribe, you must see it, or ignore it. And for cinematic movies, we've got go to the cinema, do not delay, go post haste. 2, wait for it to come out. 3, ignore and deny it was ever made. Those are basically our ranking systems for each, right?
That's right. That's exactly right. And I think that's, in my opinion, it's a slightly more pragmatic view on media of any kind, right? Which is to say, do you need to go watch it? Yes. Okay. Do you need to watch it right now, or can you wait a couple weeks? And if you don't need to watch it, all right, then why bother with it?
And that's not all. There's also a bonus. We have done, or we're going to do, some of the legwork now on our website in terms of how we can help our listeners and other people, understand which is the best streaming service in terms of quality entertainment, and maybe bang for their buck, right? So we're gonna have a ranking system or a point scoring system or a tally system, right?
I think so. I think it's really important because now that there's so many streaming platforms and so many niche ones, even more specifically, it's really hard because it's 5 years ago, it was super easy. Do you have Netflix? Yes or no? You're paying $8 a month or $12 a month, whatever.
And HBO and basic cable package, right? AMC, Mad Men. I mean, you're pretty much good to go, right?
That's right. And so, you had, if you were talking about multimedia, you were probably paying anywhere between, and I'm throwing these numbers out. These are not accurate, but, you were probably paying anywhere between $50 to $150 to get access to all your TV channels at home on your cable box, and then probably another $5 to $15 to pay for Netflix, because at the time Netflix was the only player in the game, right? And then on top of that, now, so if you're saying, okay, I'm no longer paying $50 a month or $100 a month on cable, but guess what? I'm paying $15 for Netflix. I'm paying $20 for HBO. I'm paying $12 for Disney. Soon enough, all of that is going to start adding up to that same $100, $150, and we're back to where we started 5 years ago.
Yeah, I agree. So let's explain, inspired by the Winter Olympics, our judging system or our tally system.
So we're going to look at, I think the way we're going to do it, and this is something that we're still working on, and we're going to fine tune it as we continue. But the idea that we have in general is that we're going to look at all the different shows that we always watch, and we're going to continue rating them. Yep. And whenever we give them a rating, we're going to assign that rating a point value for the streaming platform that show is on. So, for example, let's talk Yellowstone. Yellowstone is on Paramount Plus.
Yes.
So
which I have.
Which is great. which is great. So
Yes.
I like Yellowstone a lot, and
Mhm.
overall, if it were a platform I had never heard of, I would say that Yellowstone is good enough that you should subscribe to the platform just for Yellowstone.
All right.
So if
High
that
rankings. I
if
love
that were
it.
the case, I would assign Paramount Plus 5 points, for example.
Okay. Okay.
Now
I'm
let's
I'm one I'm one below you. I would say for Yellowstone, although I really enjoy it, I would say you don't need to go out and pay for Paramount Plus only for Yellowstone. I think Yellowstone is absolutely worth watching, but I would put it one mark down from what you've given it.
right, which is
which
to say you
is
would borrow or use somebody
Yeah.
else's login, right?
Watch it if you can. If you've already got Paramount Plus, watch it. If you don't, watch it with a friend who does. So you're giving 5 points to Yellowstone. You're giving 5 points to Paramount Plus. I'm giving one notch down, 3 points to Paramount Plus.
Right. And then so what the way we're doing it is we're attacking it from the shows up, not the platforms down. Right?
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
we don't want to get involved with, well, do I want to invest in Paramount Plus because they've only got Yellowstone, they don't have other contents? That's not the point of this purpose, right? That's what we can tell you that's what the points will tell you at the end of the year, right?
Yeah.
If Paramount Plus at the end of the year has 200 points and Netflix has 100 points, then you know that we've watched so many shows on Paramount Plus that are worthy of streaming, that are worthy of either borrowing the password or or subscribing to the system, that it's the platform, that it's worth getting Paramount Plus.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what? There's something built in here which makes sense, which is, I mean, just kind of off the top of my head, I would expect Netflix to have a higher score than Paramount Plus, only because I think the amount of content on Netflix is probably much higher. I may be wrong about that, but I would expect that it's much higher.
I would agree.
And therefore, if they tally more points, may not be an average of more points per show, but if they tally more points, it just kind of tells you, look, if you're going to spend $15, whatever it is, $20 a month, that money probably goes further on Netflix, where there's so many options that we think are worth seeing, compared to Paramount Plus, which may have a few stars but doesn't have just the volume of stuff. And that also depends on everyone's lifestyle. I mean, you and I are professional show watchers. Can we say that? Is that a thing? I mean, that is our career path, our career arc. Not everybody has that level of time, flexibility, or inclination to watch a bunch of stuff on a screen. There may be people that say, look, I'm super busy. I've got a life, family, hobbies, and such. I don't really need, 24 straight hours of content every day of my life. 1 or 2 shows is enough for me. And then they can just kind of listen to our podcasts and decide what's up their alley.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. So the point of this is to give real world context to reviews, right? Which I don't think most critical reviews do. I'm not saying they don't, and I'm not saying that what they're doing has no value. That certainly not. What I'm saying is that a 5 for me is not the same as a 5 for Ethan.
That's true.
So what we're saying is look beyond the numbers. Let's look at the practicals. Would you come to me and say, hey, Pete, is Yellowstone a good show? And I turn around and say, hey, I don't know if you're going to like
5.
it or not, but for me,
it's a 4.
Paramount, I like Yellowstone so much that I subscribe to Paramount for that show.
It's high praise.
Right? Which is more valuable I think that's more valuable to you as what I think of it, rather than me giving it a 9 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10, whatever that number means.
Maybe we should apply this to women as well.
Sure.
I think this rating system has so many different applications and uses.
I don't disagree. I've always been a fan of pragmatics.
Listeners, feel free to use this and apply it to your life as you deem appropriate.
Perfect. So
open source. It's open source.
That's right. So that's where we are with our quote unquote system, which again isn't so much a system as it is a recommendation. And I will provide my thoughts, and as usual, Ethan will provide his thoughts. And whether they're aligned or not aligned, at least you'll get 2 points of view on whether a show is worth watching or not.
And I think also importantly, let's see which streaming service comes out on top. I think this will be really interesting now that we're at the beginning of the year. After we go through this, to see which streaming service, takes the lead initially, and which comes out on top ultimately. And some of that may be, our dispositions, towards streaming services. I mean, we're always going to be looking for content on Netflix. I mean, for me, I like Amazon quite a lot, actually. Paramount, apart from Yellowstone, I'm not sure what else I'm watching on Paramount, but there's probably something. So, I mean, I'm pretty excited to see kind of like where you and I end up in Apple TV Plus, right? I mean, how much stuff are we watching on Apple TV Plus? I mean, we used to be heavy on Apple TV Plus. It seems like the last couple episodes we haven't watched anything. We've been focused on other areas, right?
Yeah, but I think that's also let's say what's the word, emblematic, or telling of the movie and TV series. We're at the time of recording, this is early February, and so this isn't exactly known as when TV shows are coming out, although of course
why not.
This is the thing. I think this is where streaming platforms are going to change things, right? We're no longer tied down to the concept of sweeps in the fall and TV series that have been more traditional. I think this is now the time where we're going to see, hey, we've got good content. It's ready to go. Let's knock it out on the platform.
I mean, that's kind of interesting that you said that, because the way films work is that they're always clustered around kind of like the holidays, or in summer, when either it's hot and people are looking to be inside for air conditioning, or the kids have summer holidays, they're not in school and they need something to do, right? Whereas streaming, I would think, would be something that should be very heavy in the winter months. When you think of, I mean, not just in the US, but worldwide, December, January, February are generally not months, unless you live in a very southern or tropical climate, where you're outside doing a lot of stuff. There's no picnics, there's no ball games, there's no backyard barbecues. February is the time when you're holed up and you should be, under your blanket in front of your fireplace watching, binge watching a bunch of shows. So I would expect that if this isn't being done already, the new content should be definitely coming out in the winter months. In the summer, when everyone's outside watching baseball games, tailgating, blah, 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 that's when probably content should be a little bit thin, because who's staying inside on a sunny Saturday afternoon, to watch shows? They should be out doing something, more active or exciting. Yeah.
I mean, look, again, to be determined. I think I think streaming platforms are still relatively early in their growth stage. Some have matured, but I think that the industry overall still has a lot of room for growth and a lot of room for maturation. So let's see how things go.
All right. Stay tuned.
All right, everybody. So that's our system. Tell us if you like it, love it, hate it. We're always happy to hear from you. filmsandstuffpodcast@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you.
Pete, it's been a pleasure.
As always.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.